ahead and start recording. There we go. Okay, so obviously this is my favorite S&P thing, but I just kind of want to give you a little bit of where it's coming from. So it's coming from visual attention, which is basically visual attention allows us to select a certain aspect of a visual scene and grant it priority in processing. So visual attention is used in everyday things such as looking at photos, reading books, like just perceiving our surrounding. So just kind of letting you know what that is. And my question to you is, do you think you notice everything? So the topic I picked was unintentional blindness, which the vocab definition is it's a phenomenon where someone completely misses something in their visual line because they were focusing on something else and new vision is unexpected. So I saw this quote when I was doing a little bit of research, diving deeper into it, where it says, when we focus closely on one thing, we often fail to see other things in plain sight. So the most popular example of this would be the invisible gorilla test, which was done by Christopher Chabris and Daniel Simmons. So basically in this experiment, the researchers asked people to watch a video, and in the video, it was just people tossing a basketball, and the observers were told to kind of keep track of how many times they pass the ball back and forth. So you're watching the video, right? And we watched this in class, so like I understood like how it felt like when I saw it. And then afterwards, the participants were asked if they noticed anything unusual during the video, and 50% of the participants reported seeing nothing out of the ordinary, which I fell for it the first time because I was so focused on counting how many passes. I didn't notice when the gorilla here had actually walked through the frame. So then we watched a video afterwards, which I'm assuming some participants did after they had seen that, and it was a similar video. And this time I made sure to, while I was counting, to also pay attention to anything unusual happening. So of course I felt super smart once I realized that I saw the gorilla when it came through. But what I failed to realize was the background curtain slowly changing colors from red to orange. So that's another example. So why does this happen, right? So just us as humans, rather than focusing on like tiny details in the world around us, we kind of look at things that are a little bit more obvious, and we use context clues to predict what's going to happen next. So things like that, because I knew that the gorilla was going to somehow end up back in the frame, I didn't pay attention to how the background had changed color. We notice more information that kind of jumps out at us, such as like if something went out into the middle of the road if you were driving or something like that. Another example of how our brain can do that is reading this paragraph. Most people can read this, and it's that whole thing with like knowing common sense, because we know the regular word, we're able to kind of put together what this can say. So if you can read it, congratulations. This is another example we did during class. For the first one, I could not find the mistake for the longest time, but it's just kind of all about that you don't really see it because even though it's in front of you. So it's pretty interesting. So I kind of wanted to go into how like unintentional blindness can be shown in kind of like everyday life, especially in the media. So I think this commercial is really powerful. If you can watch it, totally should. I didn't have enough time to put it in here. So I kind of put screenshots of like kind of the important aspects of it. So Sandy Hook came out with this commercial about how to end gun violence, kind of knowing the signs of what gun violence, potential like school shooter could have characteristics of. And so the plot line of the story kind of follows this boy right here, and he kind of is having this little pen pal thing with like a girl, and they're like writing back and forth. So every day he comes to the library, there's like a new note, and he's just kind of like trying to find this like mystery girl. So you can see him going through the hall, like sitting down, like writing to her again, going through the hallways, wondering if that girl's her, and then eventually they meet, right? But what we missed the whole time we were watching the whole story is this kid in the back. So he is kind of being like secluded, showing signs of like being alone. Over here he's reading a book about like guns, and then here he's watching videos on like guns, and then over here he's like getting bullied in the hallways, and then eventually he becomes a school shooter. So I know it's a little morbid, but that's just kind of like a really good example that I've seen of intentional blindness, where like it's there, it's happening, you just don't see it. Another example is from the 1989 adaptation of Poirot, and specifically the episode The Yellow Iris. So this is a really good show, watch it, but this episode especially because it kind of follows like a group of prominent people and they're eating at a dinner, and this woman here mysteriously dies. So they're trying to figure out, what happened, and they come to the conclusion that she was poisoned, but how could she have gotten poisoned? So at the end of the episode, spoiler alert, they find out that her husband was the one who poisoned her, but it was because he posed as a waiter, but no one paid attention to see that it was him because they associated the waiter's gloves and the act of pouring the champagne just to say that it was a waiter, and didn't actually pay attention and know it was him. So that's like a really good example about how intentional blindness can save someone's life, but it's also used for entertainment in like crime shows especially. Intentional blindness can often get confused with change blindness, because change blindness occurs when there's a change in the visual stimulus, but the observer doesn't notice it. The key difference is intentional blindness is a failure to see the stimulus that's in the visual field, whereas change blindness is the failure to notice something different about a display. So it typically happen like within a before and after picture kind of thing. So like, what's the difference between these two pictures? Kind of like this. So overall, I found that to be the most interesting thing we had seen, because it's kind of like, not that you're dumb because you don't notice, but it's most human beings don't really notice things like that because our brain kind of works really fast. And so that's why I picked it as my favorite thing. It was really, really interesting. And yeah, that's all. So thank you so much for watching.